Yeah, we're good to go, but we're watching something. I'm talking to the world now. You may not.
That's
You
fine.
may no longer think it exists.
Yeah, now we're online.
Just to show a little something from the
Yes,
material,
this is terrible.
material world.
This is terrible. We're online. I thought we were supposed to be offline. Oh no, we were supposed to be off the grid.
Off the grid. Not
So-
the web, just the grid.
It's just the grid. So let me just maybe kind of introduce a little bit because I was asked to convene this event so a couple of months ago, Lara Favaretto asked me to participate in this event, and I was given a choice of words to pick from and organize a chat around. And there's a whole bunch of words, and I forget them now. But I was predictably attracted to one of them, which was off the grid. And I'll just maybe by way of introduction talk a little bit about the reasons why I was interested in this particular subject. And it has to do with an event that already involved one of us here, namely Thomas Wallgren. A year ago, here in Venice, almost exactly a year ago, I organized an exhibition in conjunction with the architecture biennial at the Fondazione Prada called Machine à Penser. And this was an exhibition that was devoted to the phenomenon of the Philosophers Hut. And it was built, this exhibition was built centrally around two historical huts, two historical cabins. One of them, the hut of Ludwig Wittgenstein in Norway, and another one, the hut of Martin Heidegger in the Black Forest in Germany. There was also a third structure that was part of the equation, which was actually an artwork by Ian Hamilton Finlay called Adorno's Hut. So the show that I organized in Venice last year had, was organized around this trinity of 20th century German philosophers, Theodor Adorno, Ludwig Wittgenstein, Martin Heidegger, two of whom had actual huts built for themselves, to kind of escape to, hermitages, places of seclusion, refuge. And then thirdly, a sculpture called Adorno's Hut, which was made by Ian Hamilton Finlay, and an allusion, I think, to the centrality of the experience of exile to the philosophy of Theodor Adorno. So when I first, I was asked by the Fondazione Prada to propose an exhibition sometime in 2017 for the architecture biennial, and I basically suggested this idea of the Philosopher's Hut, which had been with me for a long time. It's something that I had long been interested in. And there's another anecdote that kind of falls into this, which is something that I think all of you will be able to speak to. In 2015, I went on a holiday trip with a family trip to Jamaica. With my in-laws, family of my wife. In fact, my wife and I got married on the island in Jamaica. We got married during that holiday, and this was a holiday villa on the coast in Jamaica. Anyone ever been to Jamaica?
No.
It's beautiful. I'd like to go back. Anyway, and I was excited about this trip because I never go on holiday. Do you guys ever go on holiday? No, probably not. No.
In Finland, in Nordic countries, we go on holiday.
You do
in the summer, we go to the cottages, to the huts.
Yeah.
Very important part of the cycle of life in Nordic countries still.
Yeah, how long?
Long holidays.
How often?
10 weeks, no. It used to be
Like
6,
a short
8 weeks
one, no?
now, but still, we still do, many of us do 4 weeks,
Yeah.
4 weeks.
Yeah. So, many people in the cultural...
Off the grid.
Many people in the culture industry, like, Olaf and Dan, we don't really holiday, right? I mean, we travel all the time, we go places all the time, but you never go anywhere to unwind or relax. I mean, you have a family, you do that.
No, I make walks with my kids.
Yeah.
This year I was going from Italy to France, and now from France to Italy, over the Glacier in 10 days.
Yeah.
Every day 15 kilometers.
Yeah.
So this is also a bit off the grid.
You go off the grid. I mean, I certainly, when in the course of 2015, plans were made for this trip to Jamaica, I was very excited because I hadn't been on a trip like that for 10 years or something. Like, somewhere where there's no art and there's no professional reason for me to go. I only ever travel to do things like this, right? And I, so we fly to Jamaica from Chicago. We arrive there. There's a bus. We get picked up. We get driven to this villa on the seashore, and I'm very excited, and we're all very kind of full of anticipation. And I will never forget the very deep sense of disappointment. In fact, it was much stronger than disappointment. When I got to this place, which was really beautiful, incredibly beautifully located, there was staff and all that, and one of the first things that the staff told us was that, well, you'll be here for a week, and there's this, there's that, here are the rules, and also there's Wi-Fi. So this is 2015. I don't even know the history of Wi-Fi, and probably some of us, maybe someone can talk about that here because it seems to be part of the subject matter. But I was it was one of the first times that I really kind of got a sense of the inescapability of the grid in a way. And I mean, of course, I didn't bring a computer to this holiday, and yeah, sure, there was a phone or something, but I did make kind of a pledge not to be spending too much time looking at things or whatever, looking things up, to Google, like the very verb to Google, right? To check, to always check your phone. This is, so that's the fall of 2015, and it was and that was kind of an important source in a way for what in 2017 led to the first conceptualization of this exhibition that was devoted to this fantasy of escape, which is in a way what Machine à Penser was about. It's an exhibition. The exhibition in Venice, dealt with a lot of different topics, different thematics. The most obvious one being the relationship between what people think and where they think. But kind of the broader horizon of the question had to do a little bit with this, dream of escape, which we all probably dream and all feel. So that's a little bit the background. That's one of the backgrounds to my interest in thinking about this formula of the grid. I also remember a couple of years ago, you may be familiar with the publication Book Forum. Book Forum. It's kind of like the literary satellite of Art Forum. A couple of years ago, they also kind of published a special issue, which just branded Off the Grid, and the cover image was of a crusty traveler type, long dreadlocks and all that. Some kind of standing on a windy shore, wind playing in his dreadlocks.
With a dog on a rope, that sort of thing.
And like a Volkswagen,
Sure.
Kind of in the little old Volkswagen bus in the background. So, and other things that kind of have percolated in my thinking about this, the writing of Jonathan Crary, who wrote this book a couple of years ago called 24/7, right, about the war on sleep that has become central to the global economy in a way. So all of these things color my interest in this topic, and I'm not sure if I have so much to say about it, but we'll just kind of talk about it, and we'll see what people's experiences are with falling off the grid or going beyond the grid. And of course, Dan, you have a book to prove that you've done it. You asked what this is on the cover. It's Spitsbergen, no?
No, this is
Svalbard.
This is up in Scotland.
This is Scotland.
Yes, so that's quite near Fort William.
So a bossy.
Right.
The hut could never be in the Nordics, so I was wondering, but then the mountains seem too high for me for Scotland.
Ah, no. So this is just it's a strange picture because I'm sure if you were to go back, this is almost a freak that you have the snow and ice there, and then this is, while still very cold, you have a little bit of snow. But just I think they must be a bit taller, but they're not as high as the Cairngorm Mountains. So you
must explain then what we're seeing.
Okay, so let me describe the cover of the book. There is a small bothy, and a bothy is a Scottish hut which allows walkers and hikers and mountaineers to overnight in wilderness. They're quite generous structures because they allow further travel into wilderness. And bothy, the word bothy, comes from, I think, bothen, which is a Scottish word. Essentially, it means cell or single room. And often, these buildings were for gamekeepers and crofters in times past, and they have fallen into disuse and then been renovated by either the Bothy Association, which is they are custodians of these buildings, and rebuild them in such a way that they perhaps you're able to join the dots as a walker and continue exploration. But they're very, very simple buildings, and this particular bothy is up towards Fort William, so in the north west of Scotland, the Inner Hebrides, I suppose. And it sits on a very dark brown-green hillside, a sort of, you can imagine the tromping to get here. You can imagine your boots filled with water, and you feel strangely warm, but you realize it's just your own body trying to sort of like let you know that you're having a wonderful and terrible time at the same moment. And it's on the cover of this book that I wrote about outposts and the idea of where the human world ceases to hold sway, where we can walk and then the wild places take over. So that's what the book's about. And it's very much a book about going off-grid and whether, you know, the impossibility in a way of going off-grid, of going into a world that is not touched by the Anthropocene, this age that we all live in now.
It's not touched by what?
The Anthropocene.
Yeah.
The
Anthropocene. I never say it correctly.
Yeah. I mean, I did some projects in Patagonia, which is maybe the farthest place that you can go. And there's, in a few years, I was there 4 years. And in the first year, I think 2012 or 13, there was nearly no internet. And 4 years later, all the farmers rent their houses at Booking.com.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's no place, you cannot leave this. But I, and for me, and it was especially these experiences with these farmers, you know, they had this, when I was the first time, there it was like, idealistic landscapes from the Renaissance. It looks, perfect landscapes, and shepherds, and so llamas, they have there. And 1 person per square kilometer lives there. And but then I realized these people, the farmers, also they change their mind because of this, they getting part of the internet world, you know, and also completely changed personality. And it's so maybe the grid is only in our mind, you know.
Yeah.
It's not about where you go. It's more, it's a bit also how you react on this, you know.
Yeah.
If you.
I think there's, you know...
Did you live there 4 years, or you went back and forth?
No, I was there several times. I make projects, and but my practice is mostly do something in the physical space with someone from the area. I have one project in the north Argentina with an Indio community called Vichy, and they live also in a kind of it's like cactus forest, and I brought a piece here, and it's from them. And this is also a kind of a grid, you know?
It's a cloth, it's a small bag.
Yeah, but they make this kind of patterns. But the interesting thing is they make these abstract patterns since hundreds of years about a completely wild nature. Yeah? So for them it's not a contradiction. So they have now to
Yes.
bring it in order, in shape. They have now
Yeah.
to bring the nature in shape, and so this is also very real for them. This kind of picture means a very real thing.
It's a very geometrical design with very few colors. So how is this nature?
Yeah, this is the colors are all from the plants.
Ah, yeah,
So and
of course.
It looks very, very sort of old and kind of Incan in that way, like
Yeah.
sort of like really quite geometric and very beautiful.
So how this is?
Vichy. It's Vichy art.
Vichy.
Yeah.
Do you know this culture?
Not well, but I've heard of Vichy, yes.
Yeah, I don't actually. Well, yeah, I mean, of course, I should perhaps add for clarification here that
It's Andean, it seems.
Huh?
Andean culture, it seems.
Yeah,
Northwest Argentina.
Yeah,
so
Northwest
it's
Argentina.
That's Andean.
have you been?
No, but I have some exposure to people who work on the Andean cosmovisions.
Oh, okay.
That's part of, I want to talk about that more if
Right,
I can.
sure.
It's very, I think
For
find it very
sure.
interesting. The interest we have today in the Andean cosmovision is very interesting for me. So I'm glad that you to
Yeah.
share this with you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. How?
Well, I mean, yeah.
No, we're
So-
just.
We have
Yeah.
a lot of time.
You have a lot of time. You have a lot of time.
Yeah,
So,
then one thing I want to react to is what they say about the net as sort of the defining grid of our times. Now it's expanding. I mean, I think of electricity as the sort of the defining grid of modernity, and when it came, it was full of hope. Like Lenin is known to have said that socialism is electrification.
the Soviets.
The Soviets. So give me the correct quote. Something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe 100 years ago, roughly. And then, and that hope lasted for quite some time, I think.
But I think he said electrification of the whole land.
Yeah, exactly.
This is-
So everybody
that
has to
is-
be very important.
It has this territorial, this
Yeah.
also be everywhere.
Yeah. So everybody has to be included, huh?
Yeah.
And that was the dream.
Yes.
And then something happened. I come from Finland. In Finland, we had this episode from 1990 to 2005, roughly, that one company, Nokia, grew quite big. And the slogan was connecting people.
Yes,
and that was socialism for the 21st century, the Finnish contribution to the evolution of mankind, that we do connect everyone. And
Right.
not only through, not only physically, the land, but also somehow mentally people will be more connected. So connection will be deeper and modernity will be more perfect and more splendid. And I think, so that's one thing, and it happened very fast. And I've been thinking of the speed of change, of culture. I mean, one thing is that the ways of life change more quickly, but I think also the shift from early optimism to disappointment was quicker. That in 1990 it was a good selling point, connecting people. Now everybody is shit scared, or you come with your net to Patagonia, and we are scared. Oh, what's going to happen with these people? What's going to happen with us when all are connected?
Yeah.
So there's been an acceleration of the speed with which modernity gets disappointed with itself. Trump is there.
Yeah.
Then we have the books. I don't know if you know these important books by Shelley Turtle, Alone Together.
Yeah, sure.
How we are all on the web and we're all there and alone together. So that's one. And then the empirical findings that we'll get depressed. The more we are on social media, the more depressed we are.
But also,
so
like
the shift to disappointment is very quick. Huh?
Yes, and the mind is actually, people are becoming not rewired, they're becoming hardwired to desire and become, addicted to dopamine hits, these hits of approval from strangers, the likes and the need to check your phone. They did experiments with people and, my phone is there and I do that. How often do I do that? I don't do that at the moment, but in daily life, how often do I do that? I do that apparently, if I am a normal person with a mobile phone, every 2 minutes to some degree. If it's next to me, if it's in my pocket, I do it every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I sleep with it next to my head, perhaps, because maybe I use it as an alarm and it's there
Sure.
the whole time. And where does this, is it a need for real connection? Or is it a need for reassurance? Or is it an actual addiction where you just want this meaningless connection? I have put a picture online. Somebody likes it. oh, half a second maybe. I
Yeah.
feel good.
Yeah.
I clear that. I put my phone down again. This is a problem. You know.
And what I wanted to emphasize this is the thing, and how quickly it comes. 20 years ago, I think it was kind of a little bit elitist, artistic, philosophical thing to have this worry. And now everybody is so worried. And I think that's a very quick learning process. But at the same time, it's getting very totalitarian. It's very difficult to do without. You know, this week we had Greta Thunberg and the climate justice movement in New York.
Yeah.
And, you know, climate justice tells us we have to leave it in the ground. We really have to leave it in the ground. It's very obvious.
Yeah.
But everybody who mobilizes for leaving it in the ground mobilizes with these machines.
Sure.
Links up even more. And who are destroying, you know, who are this grid, this monster.
Yeah.
So the ones who are fighting the monster, we know more than before what it does, how dangerous it is, and we're more completely dependent. It's more totalitarian in the sense, more a Greek tragedy than it was.
Yeah.
This reminds me a little bit of this, a quip ascribed to Frederick Jameson, I think it is, who, famously said that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism.
Yeah.
Right?
And now the end of GAFAM, the end of Google is difficult to imagine for my friends.
The end of Google.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we're going to jump all over the map here a little bit, but I mean, why not, right? But it's 2019. I live in Chicago. The only way that I am able to reconcile myself with the prospect of staying in America is the guarantee that Trump could be defeated in 2020. I mean, if he is reelected, then I'm going to have to leave the country and move back to Europe, somewhat naively. But of course, right now it looks like his most formidable challenger might be Elizabeth Warren, who has made a very expensive political promise that once in power, she wants to break big tech. And she wants to break up the biggest companies on earth. And they're, of course, not going to let that happen. And she might actually jeopardize her chances of defeating Trump by her promise, her promise, or her allegiance with kind of, the forces rallying against big technology. So something that I just keep in mind. Are you off the grid now?
No, I tried to find a philosopher. There was a philosopher from Berkeley, a French philosopher, and he wrote about that in the future we can compare each other more and more, and this makes us hysterical.
René Girard? No.
Yeah.
Mimetic desire.
Yes. And I think this is what happens when I was in Patagonia. Now they think they compare the people in Patagonia. There was a woman. She owns square kilometer. In a landscape. You cannot losing your brave. Yeah. She has a lake and everything, but it's a very simple life. She goes every day out and have this. Animals and so, and then I came with my cameraman. We filmed trees, and then she go to the cameraman and say, "Shame on you! You work for this European man, and you don't give me money for this." So, and you could see it. She was completely into the new media now. She has time. And she was sitting in the house and looking in this, and she started to compare and think and see these streams. Which is not. These pictures which are not from their reality, and she could not see where she is. Yeah. And I think when you say this about learning, this is what we have to learn. And I'm quite optimistic. We will learn. I see it by my daughter. In the summertime when we was walking, and she said, "What are you doing there?" And she tell all the photos from the friends, what they sent her.
What did she do?
From holidays,
Yeah.
She took all the photos in the trash immediately.
Oh, trashing them.
Yeah, all of them, She said, from New York, where they are, because it's hundreds of photos, in a class of 12-year-old children,
Yeah.
So you're not there, you're not in your body. And I think she understands it,
Right.
Well, there's a generation that have grown up with nothing but the internet.
Sure.
It's strange for all of us because I remember when I was at school and pagers, very briefly, pagers came in before mobile phones. And it was often the children who had doctors for parents would turn up with a pager. And we'd be like, what are you doing? What's this? And there was a system where you had to phone up somebody and tell them your message. And they would write it down and it would appear on someone else's pager in the school. And I remember very clearly there were boyfriends and girlfriends who would phone in these embarrassingly sort of like lovey-dovey messages to each other. And there's a sense of pride that this pager suddenly said, you know, I love you, sort of halfway through a science class. But even then I thought, this is just odd. And then you had the Nokia handsets, you know, the bricks came in and children, the richer children had that. And now we all have it. But there's a generation that has grown up only knowing smartphones, really. Only knowing... And
connectivity. Born into connectivity.
But they seem better at it than the people who are early developers. I think, talking of Google, our generation is Lycos, and they are Google. As in, they have only come in and got it right, or they're getting it right, because they seem to be able to pick and choose what they connect with. Whereas I think for people who it's come in through their lifetime, they feel inundated still. They feel like there is less choice because there are so many choices. You know, how do you choose what to engage with when it's all coming at you so much? Whereas the people who have the children, the teenagers, they're better able to make those choices because it's always been there. Does that make sense?
No, not much.
No,
I don't think that's the case. I mean, it's true that of course people have a different relation to the gadgets, but just the fact that you grew up with something doesn't mean that you are more competent to deal with in terms of freedom, in terms of what to do with it, in terms of expressing yourself, shaping your life with it. I'm not convinced. I mean, I hear this all the time, and I think that's exactly the thing I think maybe we're waking up to that. I think kids do more often what your daughter did, namely just drop the thing instead of using it more and more. So I think it's kind of a myth of the grown-ups that these things have to be used and will be used more and more. So I think when you speak of learning, I want to be optimistic. I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think we learn about. So maybe you're right. I'm not saying that.
I think choosing not to use it is part of.
Okay.
I mean, so
what do you mean? Okay.
What I mean.
Okay, sorry.
As in the choice to engage. I mean, with the whole platform.
Right. Okay, sorry, I didn't get you right.
Oh, no. I mean, I think Facebook, I was told recently by someone younger than me that Facebook is for their parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
And grandparents.
You know, and they are on, and grandparents.
Yeah,
Twitter they're not engaging with really either. It's things like Snapchat, it's things I've never heard of. I mean, I'm 36, but I'm a very old man in the world of the internet. And it's a strange thing for me, but I'm quite optimistic that I don't know. If that makes sense. I'm quite optimistic when people say, "Oh, I don't do that."
You see, I grew up with this.
Which is maybe a bit difficult on this how we talk. You know, it's this kind of generalization. We say we dead people, and so okay, we have to make it, but we cannot speak for them. You know, I try to train my kids. You know, to. For example, they have to, Unkraut jäten. What's in English?
Unkraut?
Unkraut jäten. You know, if you take
out weeds.
Yeah.
To weed.
We do this work, you know. I train them.
You mean in the garden?
In garden, we make gardening together, and it's so. I realized by time, because I also did not so for years. I did not share time with them. You know?
Sure.
This has to do with space-time continuum. You know, you have to make a decision for this. So it's to stay in this a longer time, and then also you're losing a little bit this talks, or this. You know, this is all about text here. This media. It's a program. So, but we are here. This is a good example. We are here in this bunker, and it's physical, and we will never, you know, if we would start to describe this space here, we could sit years, for years. You know? We will never end because if physical reality is so endless, This is the point, you know. But if you trap into this internet, what do you say? Yeah, hierarchy, you know, then you're on the very fast you come on the end. So it's a very short line, you know, because it's very hierarchical now, which it was not on the beginning. So, but now it's completely hierarchical, and so you understand. Okay, and you have on the end you have to follow some persons all the time, and you're losing your personality or your body in a way.
That sort of hierarchy of, there are different, in my experience, there are different sort of expectations as well. The hierarchy of response, the time, you know, you need to respond quickly. If otherwise people, even on text messages and things like this, people suddenly have a need that you respond to them. And there seems to be a pressure.
You know who's the worst though with that? Mothers.
Yes, I would.
They are.
Some.
Are they quicker than others, or what?
No. They're the ones who are most easily, who are the quickest to get all anxious about not receiving responses. No, I mean, this is, it sounds like a crude anecdote, but I mean, I see it in the case of my mother, but also my mother-in-law, who texts my wife all the time. I mean, they live in this kind of text bubble together. And if my wife does not answer a text within an hour, panic breaks loose, complete and utter panic. So I think, so that's, and that to me is actually interesting.
Nordic fathers will have to beat this in this time of...
And and it of course leads you to think back of like, well, how did we do it? I mean, I'm 10 years older than you are. I was born in 1972, and moving to Ghent when I was 18 to study for 5 years. How did you stay in touch with the home front at all? Did you call maybe once a week using a payphone? I guess that's what you did, right? I mean, they certainly didn't have computers, so there wasn't any emailing or anything like that. So, and this is the moment of connecting people. Yeah. And I think, Thomas, your point about Nokia is something that I often think about, because in a lot of what I write for artists, and it's strange, I often write in the service of artists who deal with the problem in a way of connecting. So I've actually written a piece once, an essay once, that was called "Disconnecting People." And this is maybe 10 years ago, and it was at a time when the art world became inundated with kind of the fantasy of relational aesthetics, and like the paradigm of immersion and all of these things, right? Which is a very kind of powerful aesthetic injunction in a way, immersion. But maybe you just want to get out, right? And this is a little bit why what we're talking about here. But I just this point you're making, Dan, about the temporal economy of this technology, where it's not just that you check it every 2 minutes, but also that you get checked all the time. Yeah. I mean, in fact, there's one more, because so many of my friends use WhatsApp, I also have to use it. I hate it. Because it feels like, one phone now serves as a computer. It's a laptop you use to type email. You type text with it, and then there's also WhatsApp. So there's like also very different text applications that converge in this one machine. Very different ways of writing. Like a simple text can never be long. An email, has to always be somewhat longer. I think it's also a technology that maybe has had its day.
Yeah.
Would that be true? I think that emailing has become a little bit the Facebook of the intelligentsia.
Well, there's this.
I
feel like younger people don't really email. No, is that?
I'm planning now. I use Facebook. I use WhatsApp because when I was in Chile, we was in a farm, huge farm, 150,000 hectares. Like a city, a huge city, and then she said, "Amelia, you have WhatsApp." So it was the only way in Patagonia get in contact. And I realized also later, because it's so, this technology is so, I don't know how they make it, but they can send small pockets, you know. SMS, I think it's more one bigger data pocket. Mm-hmm. And a phone call is too unstable, you know. But this WhatsApp, they send it with little pockets. Yeah. I think that's the point. Also, this was the only good way to interact there. Mm-hmm. And now I'm planning a show in Buenos Aires, and also I'm in contact with 2 museum directors. Yeah. And they never answering emails. Yeah. Never. I mean, they are also 40 something established women, man, and they never. But WhatsApp all the time. Really? And you could see mostly they are in the social. You know, they have social. Also, they're sending photos from their parties and all these things. But I'm an old European, you know. I want to have something like a little contract, you know. So one email where it's written, okay, Olaf, we make the show, and you get this, and we open on this day, and I can trust on it, and this would be okay. Yeah. But I lost my first. I should have a opening this summer in the north of Argentina. This show which I'm doing now in Buenos Aires, and this did not happen because I did not sending social things all the time. You know. Sure. I made one email at the beginning of the year. Said, we have to show in the summer. Mm-hmm. Yes, I received a letter. And then I asked again in June and so, and then she said, "Oh no, that's not. It has changed now." And because I was not always in the.
Because you're not in that bubble.
Yeah, they feel I'm not a person, you know. I'm too abstract.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm not always in present. And
you know, this is it. I mean, this is, I think, a little bit the shift from. I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, we all email because we're old school, or you know, academics or scholarly types, books. But the other universe is now that of that particular technology, which is one of constant presence. I mean, this is the thing. And because what I think is especially malicious about WhatsApp is that you can check, you can see whether someone has read
text.
Has received your message or not.
Yes.
And sometimes you send someone something and come on, like it's been a week. Can you bloody well read what I sent you?
But you know you can turn the ticks off.
You can.
You can turn the ticks off. So there are levels of passive aggression. This passive aggression with social media is amazing. And also you were saying about the panic. Yeah. That people, you haven't responded and people react viscerally to that. I occasionally have turned my ticks off just because I think I don't want that. And then you get messages about how your ticks haven't come up either. And is everything all right? And there's also the tyranny of the long message and the engagement. Do you know TLDR or TLDNR? Which you will send an email and you will get TLDNR. Too long, did not read. Oh, okay. That is the response sometimes. So you are emailing someone who is very busy and you get TLDNR. So they must be sending these out all the time. And you not know that does not give me any confidence they will ever read it. That's not a message that says, when I have more time, I will read this.
Sure,
sometimes.
They won't.
So I have a friend who wrote a book about the Wu-Tang Clan's first album. And they are very difficult people to get hold of.
The Wu-Tang?
Yeah. So he ended up sort of emailing out to people who he knew members of them. Just not because he wanted them
They
in
are what?
Quite difficult to get hold of.
But who are they?
They are...
The Wu-Tang Clan? You don't know the Wu-Tang Clan? Damos. They're completely iconic, kind of mid-90s New York hip-hop consortium. They're very, they're like a powerful underground hip-hop force. Okay.
Very underground.
That's
Never
very
heard.
good. Very
no,
good.
that was quite famous.
No, but they're popular, but they embodied the spirit of underground rap when they emerged.
Okay.
Yeah. So he wrote.
But they're also like a cultural force, which is why
Yeah.
someone would write a book about them.
Yes, and their first album, 36.
Enter the 36 Chambers.
36 chambers. So he wrote a book of 36 chapters, each which dealt not with a particular song, but with the cultural background and then the music and then the individuals involved. And when the book was published, he wanted to send, a copy to them. And he began getting in touch, or trying to get in touch with their associates. Because in the world of hip hop, as I believe it, they don't have a direct line of communication. They have associates, and you go through these gatekeepers. And time and again, he would he would write a long email to just say, introduce himself, talk about the book, talk about the fact he liked the album, he had done this work. And he would get versions of, this sounds great, but your email is too long and I did not read it.
Right.
Good luck.
Right.
I will share with you a terrible story about the aggression that's connected. But I interrupted your story. You wanted to
No, not really.
tell us what happened. I mean,
This is
never reached.
They didn't read it.
they didn't read it. I mean,
It was too long.
it was too long. But then, just to go back to the idea of connectivity, I was once on a mountain with my father. We climbed the Dent Blanche mountain in Switzerland, the Pennine Alps, and I was going after the story of my great-great-aunt and uncle who climbed this mountain in 1928. I went up with my father 5 years ago. We got benighted, so we had to stop on the mountain. We stopped, we sat down, we roped ourselves on. I had been living in the 1920s and 30s whilst writing the book in my mind, because that was when the people I was writing about were alive, were climbing this mountain. And suddenly in that moment I realised that I was not living in the 1920s and 30s. I was living in 2015, and I did not have a working mobile phone. And I suddenly realised that no one knew where I was. My father was fine with this, because whenever he'd been climbing, that was never a possibility.
Sure.
But we suddenly realised two things. One was, people would be worried because we did not have a mobile phone, first and foremost.
Yeah.
They couldn't get hold of us. The second one is, they might try and rescue us, at which point we did not have the right insurance for a helicopter. This became paramount, because if you do not have the right insurance for a helicopter in Switzerland, where a cup of tea is £10, a helicopter would be about £50,000. And I was sitting with my father, and we realised we did not have the correct insurance for a helicopter. We did not have a mobile phone to say, please do not rescue us. And he began thinking about whether he would have to remortgage his house back in Bath to pay for a helicopter we did not want. Mm-hmm. And so rather than a vehicle to let people know we were okay, the phone became a vehicle of letting people know that we had done the maths and our lives were not worth saving by Swiss standards of currency and helicopters. We were like, leave us alone. We needed a mobile phone to say, leave us alone on the mountain.
Yeah.
We are stuck, but we are fine, and we will walk down tomorrow. And I thought that was incredible, that you need, even if you don't want to contact people, you still need to let people know to leave you alone.
Sure.
Because it's no longer the given, it's no longer the starting point that you wish to be left alone. No, you always wish to be rescued. Sure. You always need to be in touch. Otherwise, there is something wrong.
This is why giving away your smartphone and going back to a flip phone is like a very kind of aristocratic decision in a way, right? And people take these now. And Hito Steiro, who's in the biennial, told me that she, because of a project she did at the Serpentine this summer, she got into some kind of hot water with some kind of communication technology companies, and she basically decided to get rid of her smartphone. One reason being that she did no longer want to be always localized, right? Because of course it's also a machine for always. I mean, it's a very powerful machine for control, right? This thing, that we carry around, it's also a machine that always knows where you are.
It's a location tracker.
I mean, it's surveillance technology. But I'm interested in your story about aggression.
Yeah. I think you see.
Social
I think it's true that there's this elite phenomenon among youth and among philosophers and artists that we think we drop the phone and we go away and we're not part of it. So that happens, and I think that's a real movement. So I'm cutting your links.
Yeah.
But the story I wanted to report comes from those who have never been included and who still fight for survival outside the grid. Those who don't have access because they don't have the means, and some people who also fight to have the right to remain off the grid. I was on an expedition on a solidarity mission to Honduras in 2009. There was a coup there this was very normal Latin American politics. There's a democratic change of government, then the new government is more left or slightly left, not very radical, and then there's a military coup and the people are thrown out, and I was there on a mission just to monitor the resistance against the military coup. So I got to know people in Honduras in 2009, very nice. Some of the people I got to know were from the Lenca indigenous community, and they had interesting connections to Finland because, or that happened a few years after. The Lenca people have a sacred river, and then people come and want to build a dam on the river to produce electricity. So then the local community protests the dam to protect the river. And one of the leaders of that protest movement was a woman called Berta Cáceres, whom I happened to see quite a lot in that lovely solidarity mission to Honduras in 2009. So 3-4 years later, she was desperate to reach people in Finland because Finnish development money was funding the building of that dam to get Chinese and World Bank and Netherlands money. Finnish Development Bank money was involved in funding the building of the dam that was destroying the river and destroying the cultural survival of the Lenca people. So Berta was there protesting it, and then protesting in those countries is not very safe. So 2nd March 2016, she was murdered. And then we wondered, do we have blood on our hands? Finnish taxpayers are very much part of the solidarity movement. The development money, which is there, is a product of solidarity mobilization. We wanted to have money. We wanted to share with the Lenca people. And then our money comes in. The money we have mobilized for solidarity comes in, and they kill our friends. So what is this? She did not want to be part of the grid. She wanted to be off the grid. She didn't want to be part of the electricity producing worldwide community. So she was murdered. So we had public dialogues in Finland. I come to my point very soon. People from the Development Bank in Finland joined the dialogues, and we asked, we should sort of express our regrets, our apologies. It came very lukewarm, very slow. But we did have these public dialogues. There was some regret that we have been funding a project which was then the people in charge. It was obviously a political murder. She had to the people building the dam wanted to get rid of Berta Cáceres because she was a leader who was in their way. Now, coming out from one of those meetings, an old friend from Finland in the development business, idealist, green solidarity idealist of the old times, now director of the bank. So we were waiting, the two of us, for a lift to go down from the meeting. And then he told me, confided, that between old friends, speaking in a soft voice, that, Berta was against development, so she really had to go. It's sad, but that's how it is. So, the amount of violence and aggression that we commit in order to do what we then say is inevitable. So this is the terrible story I wanted to report. There are the people who are not part of it. And also my prediction is that they stand for the future, that all this thing with rare earth metals and building dams on all the rivers of the planet, all this thing is going to go. It's a short-lived civilization, I think. maybe it's going to be there 100 years still, maybe less than 100 years. It's collapsing.
Ours is a short-lived civilization.
Yeah. So off the grid is the future. And she was, so when she was murdered, she was against development.
With humans or without humans?
I think with, but that's I have very desperate predictions. I just want to say that I think the battlefield, there's something very real happening, which is sort of not part yet of, not included yet in that phenomenally effective and rapid expanding grid that we call the net. And in this context, the shed, we could go back to the shed. There are people who live in sheds. The shed on your, you call it a
Bothy.
bothy.
Yeah.
The bothy. There are people for who, and your Patagonia, they are connected, but not that much. They want to be now on the WhatsApp, but not that much.
No, so this, what I described is, there was a few people, which was very... I think it's more about decisions, When we spoke about about the past of your mother, when you go to the school and all the things. So, and I think in the past, we did make more decisions, We sent someone a letter and we said, okay, I will come in a week, and then you make your decisions.
Sure, yeah.
And then you was not able to correct this. And also, for example, you said, okay, I want to have marry someone or I will plant a tree. It means, okay, you make a decision and you're taking care of this.
Sure.
You would not say, today it's good to plant a tree, and then you forget it.
No.
You was more connected to these things.
Well, while I am here in Venice, I have written 3 letters. People think I'm mad.
Postcards.
A postcard. I'm someone who still sends postcards. I write letters to people, and I never get responses. I get responses to my letters 20% of the time. People don't know what to do. People don't know where their post office is. People get my letters. Also, my handwriting is difficult to read. So, or I don't think so.
Can I see?
It's not
I'm
so
not
bad.
read that. None were superb.
One were superb. Yeah. But there is that thing where you can... I remember talking to a photographer for a book I wrote about creative process. And he said overnight, when digital technology came in, overnight, magazines, newspapers, they didn't know how to use negatives. They got rid of their dark rooms. They got rid of the people who knew about chemicals and film. And so his job suddenly became enforced. He had to be digital to be a photographer. You had to know how to use Photoshop. You had to know how to make your pictures perfect. He had to do all this to maintain his position as a photographer because the technology changed and his chemicals were taken away from him. They stopped making, until it's recently come back, but they stopped making Polaroid film. People used that, unless you're Anton Corbin. You did not have access to things. So there's also a tyranny of change, which is what you were talking about,
exactly.
where it is not a soft, lovely, hipster, arty decision. You have these big global companies like Kodak, like Apple, who take these decisions that fundamentally change the way people do their jobs, and they change the media because when I last bought a laptop, they had taken away the USB things. They'd given me little USBs, which nothing fitted, because that was the future.
That's capitalism.
You
just have to buy new stuff.
More stuff.
more stuff.
Which you lose very easily. It's the same with this, no?
But the aggression,
this is the thing that drives me most crazy. But yes.
Well, I'm interested in the tyranny part, in the violence part. There's lots of, and also what you tell us, Olaf, about Patagonia. There is, of course, a pull effect. People do want, even though you're there in Patagonia, the beautiful landscape, still you want to be on the WhatsApp. So I don't deny that this phenomenon, that interest, the curiosity, the voluntary aspect is there. But there's lots of pressure, there's lots of violence, lots of aggressive push to, and people, they are making life difficult for us unless we buy the stuff. Unless we buy the stuff without the USB thing, we're going to be out. So there's lots of that dependence, and I'm interested in the model and sort of also the sort of emotional economy of that. How aggressive people are when people who are not dependent on the money it brings. My university has reformed. Went to the premises. My University of Helsinki. There's a very sudden reform. We have to cut office space, they say. But that's not the heart of it. They say we should cut office space. We should move people from their small offices to these huge open landscapes where people sit in big halls, 100 people together, and somehow there's the administration thinks that when people are in these big halls, they're going to be creative and new things will happen, and only old-fashioned people will be in these small rooms. And they're very aggressive when they say this is not good. They say they become very, very.
This is the future.
And the tyranny comes very quickly.
Yeah.
Shows its ugly face.
Yeah.
So we're going to forcefully remove you.
But I think that's not right. I think there is a mistake. Sorry, it's not. It is right, but
no,
I
want to have your.
I think I think there's this European idea of development of all this capitalism, feudalism, all these words, this kind of language, this dialectical language and progress. It's all in this, and then there's bad capitalism and the good. But I have the feeling this is a bit, then we follow the same path, we try to find a way out. But I think that there is no way out of this. There is something parallel. There is this grid, you can go there, or you can say, go out. And it's always parallel. You have also not to destroy your phone, just make it, do it different, make it. This is a bit, but this is hard, because it's so attractive all the time. And also these fights are very attractive. You can make career, especially in the art, you're left-wing and there's generations of left-wing artists, since let's say 1870 or so, since 150 years, you have to be on this side, and you make career on this, But you're also in this kind of you're inside from this kind of hierarchical pattern, and I think for now we are in the post-industrial time, and we have millions of people. We have nothing to do, so they have also we plug them also in. Or they are also now in this system. You're also there. For example, I make this work with the. It's about these issues. I make this work with the Vici, I said. With the Indio community. Yes. And when I was there first time, I was invited, and someone organized it for me. It was not so much. I decided to make it, but I had some helpers. I had a dealer, as a woman, which was selling their things, and so. Okay, and then I met them the first time, and I thought, should I continue, because I'm from Europe? It's very far to continue with this community in the jungle. Is it balanced and so? But then I realized for them. That's a basic thing, They had made a very good business, so they get 10 times more income when they make with me this work. And I thought, okay, then that's okay, For them, it's a good deal, And on the beginning, when the conversation with this family in the jungle, I said to them, it's too cheap. Your how do you say?
Your
clothes are too cheap. You sell it on the market for a few dollars, but so many work, you have to come on a higher level. And then the dealer from Buenos Aires, he said to me, Olaf, you cannot speak with them like this. You're a white person, and you are. And then the mother of the family, the 80-year-old woman, she came with something like this, and then she said, "Oh, you mean this kind of work?" She understand this, and later they told me, Olaf, we play this naive game because we want to be off the grid. I make it short, I said, because they said we had bad experiences when we compare inside. When we say, okay, we also artists. If we would say this is art, it's important what we do, then they immediately try to. It's
a losing proposition.
So it's and I could see it's a bit. I think we have to decide to go and in the future, you know, this capitalistic whatever, this kind of text cloud, it involves so many humans, and they are always fighting with each other. But and it's also the sense, you know, we have to do something with these people. You know, after in Germany, Berlin, East Germany, where I came from, this post-industrial society. So they are all part of this kind of internet, or the works. You know, you get to have more and more of these people. But the question is, if you find another way to act parallel. For example, I tried to make physical things.
But
give more attention in this kind of exchange.
Yeah, but that's what I meant with Berta Cáceres in Honduras, and I met to see friends in South Mexico, in Oaxaca. A friend I met 30 years ago in Finland, and now first time after that. He lives and works with the indigenous communities in South Mexico. Oaxaca is the only state in Mexico which has majority of indigenous. And the shared difficulty, and this is what they experience, that the thing you suggest, which I think is beautiful, that we have this parallel, the world with many worlds. That's what the Zapatistas say. We want to create a world where many worlds can live in parallel. But that's what the experience is becoming difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, Berta Cáceres wanted not to destroy left or right wing or modernity. She wanted to have a life of her own, for her community. And then she was destroyed. And now this AMLO, this Mexican president, is in. And now that Zapatistas are more dangerous than before, because he won elections in a big way, the new Mexican president, social democrat or whatever he is. And he is more dangerous because he has got a bigger legitimacy. So that means he can move in, not because he wants to, officially, not because they want to destroy people, but they want to destroy those who are not part of the one way of life. Yeah. So I think, Olaf, yes, it's beautiful, but we have one... I have this problem with modernity. I think much of it has been very aggressive, and we don't want people to have sheds and places where they can think and places where they can be off the grid, because somehow that's not only that we can't exploit people there, but then we can't. Somehow it's disturbing, the kind of freedom, the thing we don't understand that may be happening in that shed or in that village or in that. That's somehow terrifying to me.
It's the Tom Waits song. Do you know the Tom Waits song? What's he building in there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. That's what I mean. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because the essence of the shed, in a way, when you speak about it that way, is that it's opaque.
Yes.
So, in a way, these giant common workspaces are obviously also completely folded into this culture of surveillance, right?
Yeah.
It's not just. Obviously, the rhetoric of business is that, communication flows more freely, and there'll be, teamwork will come about more organically. But it's also, kind of a very simple measure of control, right? Like you can see what your colleagues, how much time is he spending on Facebook, or
But none of this is new. In the 1930s, the BBC, they had a new director at the British Broadcasting Company, and they took away all of people's angle poised lamps because they said the BBC was too full of men at desks with angle poised lamp, low light, thinking.
Right.
And it was meant to be a broadcasting company, and this was, in some ways, of a new director worrying that you had all of these individuals with their low lights plotting, thinking too much.
Sure.
So the same thing, you have these bigger rooms, you have the sunlight coming in, you don't want people working after dark, you don't want this sedition.
Yes.
The idea that it is in some way worrying to the powers that be that people can spend time on their money in their own head.
Yeah.
There's actually a nice parallel here with the process of modernization that you talked about earlier, and kind of its convergence with electrification. There's this really great book that Wolfgang Schievelbusch wrote. Do you know who he is?
No.
He's like a German cultural historian. He wrote this book, Disenchanted Night, about the rise of electrical lighting in European cities in the 19th century. And of course, how electricity was sponsored on the back of this idea of enlightenment as not just a physical fact, but also, kind of a mental one or a spiritual one. But of course, it also meant the destruction of many illicit cultures and illicit economies that, aren't necessarily perverse, but, thrive in intimacy and in seclusion and privacy. And of course, the question of privacy, I guess, is tantamount here. One of the things that I think is very important to understand about these machines, and I have a 2-year-old son. Your children are older. Thomas, you have a daughter, no?
15.
Yeah, 15. What's that?
No, there's 3 kids, but please go.
Yeah. So Isidore's 2, and all I think about is like, what are we gonna do? Of course, by the time he's 10, maybe it'll just be a chip planted into the palm of his hand, and he'll talk to it, and some kind of thing in the air is going to answer his question. I don't know.
Drones.
Drones. Drones. Yes.
But Thomas says, this kind of this net, this grid. I would say it's kind of the new bourgeoisie. It gives you security. You're part of the. It's not bourgeoisie, but it's this. If you're part of the grid, you're part of the. On both sides.
Well, it's civilization. It equals civilization. But what I wanted to say is, the fear that we all feel is, among our generation, I think, very strongly bound up with the idea of privacy. In a way we don't want to be spied on, right? Like, we distrust things like this because of, kind of the fact that there's some kind of military technology that's behind it and all that. And but I'm sometimes worried that for a younger generation, in fact, that privacy is the least of their concerns. That they actually don't care. For the issue of privacy, for someone like Elizabeth Warren, is like the make or break point with big tech. Basically, she wants to break Facebook because Facebook is a giant machine for destroying the private lives of citizens. And that's a huge, that's a huge claim, and she has a lot riding on it. And the problem is a little bit that half of the electorate are young people who may not care about the fact that they've willingly surrendered privacy. They don't seem to care so much about it. And of course, those of you who have older children may have different perspectives on it. But so I think that's kind of part of some kind of discord in this generational shift in the approach towards these technologies. Do we care? Are we born in the 60s and 70s and 80s? Are we too obsessed with an idea of privacy that is perhaps completely historical and bourgeois or something? Is privacy overrated, right?
No, bourgeois is to be in the grid. This is the kind of this is what
it's the new bourgeoisie.
Because you said you're involved in this group. You have a job because you're part of the grid.
Yeah.
So
that's not bourgeoisie. I think that's more kind of.
No, but I make a translation from what Thomas says before. That you're inside. You're part of this of the
monster.
If you put yourself outside, then you are really like an outsider. What he says about what Dan says about the mountain. When you feel you're an outsider now.
People try and rescue you for your own good and bring you back in.
But it's a bit okay. But this is what I mean. You have to make the decision.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we don't know if our children will do this, but I'm sure that a lot of people will do this because. Because there's this physical space, because it's also about look in Berlin, also in Japan when I was 15 years ago, you could see all these hipsters, text, fashion, lifestyle, food, all these things. People they realize they have to do something for their body. They are always in the matrix and they have no personality and they try to find something, and they manipulate their body, because they see they are nobody. It's a bit. There's a small steps, but also I could see in for example when I was in Chile. On one way you can see this is equality. All the farmers also in Patagonia now part of the internet. But in the same time, you can see people build their own houses without architects. They're thinking much more about food. This is also a movement. So
but yes, no, for sure, absolutely. Like craft brewing and all that, and home gardening. Sure, this is like the fact that we're ensnared in this culture of connectivity makes us long for the physical world.
And I think that when I was in Israel, and I think there are a lot of avant-garde movements. And I was once in a kibbutz there, and I thought, okay, these are this right-wing young hipster people, but seems to me very conservative. The man was not doing anything. All jobs was made by the wife, and I thought I have to go there. They are, but they bring me because they made some special furniture. But then later he showed me what he's doing. They're creating a network of handcraft people in the whole Middle East and building houses for special people. It was absolutely up to date. It was old and new at the same time.
This keys into, I think, everything we've been talking about is that word, special people.
Huh?
Special people. This sort of keys in to what we're talking about, because the outside and the inside, it depends where you're standing. All of this, who are the special people? Are the special people the ones who can choose to be outside, or don't choose to be outside, or choose to be inside, or don't choose to be inside? The fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that we have, to some degree, in a bunker, in the Venice Biennale, the fact we have this distance to talk about the fact that, social media. Meanwhile, the world is on fire. There are different problems. When I am here, this is a very privileged thing. We've all been flown or got the train or whatever to be here to talk about this stuff. So it's always, as you were saying, and actually all of us were saying, who is the we? Who is the you? Who is the generalization? When you talk about mothers, whose mothers in that way?
Exactly.
And we are so far removed, perhaps, from even under 100 years ago, the fact that it was quite, when people were setting up the networks of the electricity, it was even, and I've got a bit here about it, the idea that it was quite socialist. Even FDR setting up these big dam projects, there was a kind of hope and socialism about the connectivity. There was, it was always described. Can I read this very small bit?
Of course.
It's from Richard Brautigan. There's a short story that I love by Richard Brautigan called "I Was Trying to Describe You to Someone," in which, having tried and failed to describe his beloved in terms of other people.
Slowly.
Okay, sorry. I'll stop. There's a short story that I love by Richard Brautigan called "I Was Trying to Describe You to Someone," in which, having tried and failed to describe his beloved in terms of other people, I couldn't just say, well, she looks like Jane Fonda. I couldn't say that because you don't look like Jane Fonda at all. The narrator instead likens her to a movie about rural electrification, a perfect 1930s New Deal morality kind of movie, which he saw as a kid in Tacoma, Washington, making it quite possible that it's a film about these very Saget dams, because I went and visited some dams near Seattle. A movie about farmers living and working without electricity until a new dam is built and electricity flows, appearing to the farmer like a young Greek god to take away forever the dark days of his life. Suddenly, religiously, with the throwing of a switch, the farmer had electric lights to see by when he milked the cows in the early black winter mornings. The farmer's family got to listen to the radio and have a toaster. That's how you look to me. The end.
So that's terrible, huh?
Yeah, or it's wonderful, depending on who you are.
Exactly, that's my point, But literally, I want to connect this thing. Dan is talking about this is from your book about the shed and you have worked so much on the shed. This thing about electricity coming and what then happens. And I mean, Olaf, you mentioned electricity and enlightenment, and what is the connection there? That I think it is interesting, Dieter, where you made an exhibition about 3 philosophers who defined philosophy in the 20th century, Wittgenstein, Adorno, and Heidegger. For those who are not philosophers, let me just say that these are sort of very big names in philosophy, very big names in history of enlightenment, we think as philosophers. Then Dieter puts up a show, he says, much of the best work of these people happened in these sheds, which were kind of off the grid. Heidegger's hut in Tottenauberg, Wittgenstein's hut in Skjolden in Norway, Adorno in exile in California. That's where the masterworks were written. Now, one thing, I've been discussing this thing with colleagues twice, last year here in Venice and this year with Dieter, another place, spending days with philosophers and artists about and one thing which occurred to me preparing for this occasion was that I think we mentioned whether they had electricity in the shed or not. And then I checked your exhibit catalogue because I thought that neither of them, neither Heidegger, whose hut was built in 1920s, and Wittgenstein, his hut was built in Norway in 1910s, but he lived there in 1930s mainly. So I thought neither would have had electricity. But then it appears, at least from the exhibit pictures, that Heidegger did have.
You can tell? Light or something.
There was a lamp, an electric lamp, but I would bet that Wittgenstein did not have electricity in Skjolden.
No.
So that means that the greatest breakthroughs in enlightenment, in bringing light to reason, happened in this.
In the dark.
In the dark. in the winter. In the winter 36-37 in Skjolden.
In these caves.
So the claim is that light, when electricity comes and light goes out. So that's it. Yeah. So I object to your.
Of course. Well, I was just reading it. I was not reading it with.
Of course, no.
Good or bad.
Yeah.
But it's moved away from the kind of the God coming, and yet with enlightenment, the God of the mind.
The God is important. Yes.
Yeah.
But I want to make it. I want to say something about.
Olaf wants to protest.
Yes, yeah. But first, I want to make a point, like a somewhat categorical point. But I mean, one thing that I'm a little bit personally tired of is this this idea that we look at technology as a mere tool. The comparison of a particular technology to a knife, which a knife can be used to cut meat to feed yourself, or it could be used to kill someone. Right?
The neutrality idea. Yes.
I don't like that.
No.
The knife, in a way, I'm tired of it. And I think actually that, and this is something I think that, and this is a problematic stand to take, but I think that actually now I'm going to say something somewhat silly, but I think that the internet actually is objectively bad. I think it's a force I think it's just, so this long, there was a moment of utopia. There were, lots of utopian expectations existed around the technology. I mean, I think that social media was very dramatically misread in the period 2011, 2012, when it was set to spawn, kind of the Arab Springs and all that.
Arab Spring, yes.
And so those are the instances where sometimes technology is served to us as like, here's just a neutral, valueless tool that can be used for good or for bad. I actually no longer believe that. I think that actually this tool was developed for nothing other than purposes of control and subjugation. And in fact, I also think, and I've written about this in another catalog essay just recently, I also think that there's some kind of law of exclusion between the idea of connectivity and the idea of art. And surely there's a lot of great art to be produced using those technologies and addressing these technologies. But I think that they actually inhabit philosophically exclusive realms where, new media are inimical in a way to the spirit of art.
But what would you do? What you would do with all these humans which has no work now? I mean, I can see in the art world. No, I mean,
people out of jobs because of robotics.
Yes, because this internet I think that's one of the main reasons why it grows so fast. And you can see the administrators inviting code, because you can see, especially in the art world, you know, now these institutions are full of sub jobs.
Universities as well.
And on the end, they're not producing any artwork. I mean, they're not, for example, in the museums in Germany sometimes, mostly, they cannot invest in an artwork. They can only invest in administration.
Sure.
So
In
making the show, in infrastructure, all the money goes in infrastructure. The museums, which normally is a house to collect an artwork and to exhibit for the public, so they cannot also not invest in, let's say, teaching people to produce an artwork.
Yeah.
You know? Only
Well,
they put.
yeah. This is a function of the new spirit of capitalism.
So yeah.
Tomsky. You know, this is
But when you say bad, you know, if you say this is bad, so okay, if you would cut off this technology, you know, you would immediately, half a billion people would have no job.
No job.
Yeah, they had nothing to do.
Half a billion people would lose their jobs, but 2 billion people would be back into jobs, of course. Right?
No.
I mean, I don't think, like, the question of labor is something different, and, you know, Thomas probably has something to say to that, because, of course, you know, we all know that automation is going to, like, in 20 or 30 years' time, 80% of all people involved in logistical work are out of jobs, right? Thanks to developments in the technology.
Either
robotics.
that or this particular conversation that we're having today will be held up as the turning point of the 21st century, which I'm quite excited about.
September 25th, 2019.
Yeah, they will look back at this talk and go, "Hang on,
that was the bunker
talk." That was the way it all shifted.
You know, that's how I see ourselves. I mean, that's the only way to see ourselves.
Yeah.
But need to make it this category point. I would make another category point, you know,
good.
and I would say. You know, to work with a fiber and to work in the jungle.
Optical fiber, not.
We're doing fiber
about the
Vichy in the jungle, and be a shepherd and working with the computer. There's no difference, because it's always about material world. And there's only a category, you know. There's a people theorist says one about a video once. I thought really interesting. She said she looked about the screen. You know, how looks the screen? How look the projector? This surface, you know, this is controlling but mainly we look only on the movement of the film and the text. But this is very physical, you know, the space and all those things. And I think it's always connected. And I think this, we're speaking about, in my opinion, we're speaking about text and meaning. And then we say, okay, this is capitalism and all those things. And we speak about material world. And in the material world, there's a continuity between this fiber and the jungle and the shepherd and the light, because the people who really produce the internet, and so they're always thinking about, okay, how long, and you know, how they can build a chip, how big can be a computer, how does the economy, so how big can be a screen from an iPhone, you know, that you can carry this. This is always the basic decision what they do.
The hardware.
The hardware, you know.
But the delivery method, the digital versus the analog, I think the delivery and the actual network, if we're talking about the grid, if we talk about a physical analog grid, or we talk about an instantaneous digital grid, the means of connection changes the message.
Yeah.
This text brings us together. So yes.
Yes.
But
it goes through a
what
filter.
does it bring together?
But it also changes togetherness.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just like, I understand what you mean. The substrate is always the material world, but
And I think this is also the way out.
We kind of change
Or
it.
the way to change it, you know. If you really want to change this, you can go in this hierarchical way. You can, you know, like this, I don't know, capitalistic and all this philosophic thing, but it's always in the same cloud. So if you want to change it, you have to change the material world.
I want to report.
And this is a big risk. Like your friend, you know, he tried to change the physical world. It's a big risk.
That's very. I went to the. I bought a share in Nokia. This is my Finnish favorite company, and I bought a share in Nokia, and some other friends as well. I went to the Nokia shareholder meeting, and we suggested that in Nokia shareholder meetings we have a lottery every year, and we put there's 380 million shares.
When did you buy this?
This was maybe 6-7 years ago.
Oh, so
maybe 8-9 years ago.
When it was already kind of...
It was, Nokia network still big, so it was still, Finland still. So we went there, and we have so many. Nokia was still big at the time before the collapse. This was before the collapse, so maybe it's 10 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you buy a share. We suggested that each share has a number. All numbers are put in a big hat, and we draw one number, and the winner, the owner of the share, gets a free ticket to go to the Congo to work in the mines to produce rare earth metals. The only obligation is you come back, you spend 3 months and you work on the local conditions. Nokia will take care if you have mortgage and have family to support. Nokia will take care of those expenses. And the only obligation is you come back to the shareholder meeting next year and you give a report. And we're very disappointed that only 40,000 shares voted for us and 398,117,000 voted against our proposal. But that was the material side of the...
What a terrible conspiracy to vote against you. I mean, who were these?
You should have had your shares.
Yeah, I would have, But, going back to the Trump thing, Trump has changed the law now. It used to be... They didn't used to use kids so much to get the mercury and the rare earth metals. One of the first things Trump did when he came into office was change the moral, rules for people like mainly Apple. So now the things in this phone can come from anywhere. Whereas before, under the previous administration, there was not just a moral, there was a legal duty to show where your supply chain went back to. Yeah. That's now gone.
But you see, the supply chain, that never worked. The 40% always come from, or 25%, always came from the Congo. So, the supply chain was never, and that was the point, of course, everybody was claiming that we don't buy from the Congo. And everybody knew that 25 or 40% comes from there.
That's where the uranium came from, wasn't it?
As well, but
for the Manhattan Project.
The big producers of Contal, the Talantium. Contal is the name of the mineral. It's the Talantium, I think.
Yes.
Tantalium is the mineral which is needed.
Yes.
So a lot of that comes from
It's a superconductor.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. If this is a 4-minute warning, I'm glad we're in a bunker talking about nuclear and...
Yeah, something is happening.
Coltan is what you mean.
Maybe.
Then the material that's mined in the Congo.
Yeah. It's mined in China and Russia and US and many places, but a lot of it is there in the Congo. Yeah. Unfortunately, they're rich in minerals. Okay. So it's difficult. I knew the person who was ethical advisor to Nokia in those times, and she insisted many years that we don't buy from there. And the discovery was that it was impossible to implement the kind of monitoring of the supply chain. So maybe I'm glad if that has changed and Apple can.
No, I
think
now
it's changed back.
It's changed back. It's
okay.
They can say, well, it's.
We no longer. Scaling back to deregulation, basically.
Deregulation.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, but even with regulation, it's very difficult to monitor.
Of course.
So Trump is less hypocritical. That's a big difference.
Sure.
No, of course he's not. Yeah, no, he's not a hypocrite.
No, that's right.
He wears his evil on his sleeve.
Yes. And others try to hide it.
Maybe this is obviously the unanswered thing about Elizabeth Warren. She is mainly trying to break up big tech to get Trump off Twitter. That's, this is the...
But is she against the GAFAM, the Google and Facebook and these things, or against the
wants
banks? The banks.
No, her thing is more Bernie is the banks, and she's Silicon Valley. That's her focus.
Okay. So I want both, you know.
But this
you want both.
But this movement you had also in France in the 19th century. You know, I know that. Because there was I think in Belgium there was a lot of printing companies. And they print for France the books, you know, without authors. They did not get a fee, you know.
Sure, okay.
And then
outsourcing.
In France they changed the law, you know. So. I think Baudelaire, he did not make money on it long time because it was printed outside of the country, and they could not control it. Sure. And then they then they changed the law, and then in this moment they could have an income.
Right.
So it's a bit a technological thing. Maybe it was faster making new print machines and they could print it outside from France because they had trains and it was so.
There was something. Who's hungry?
Oh no, not yet. No.
Okay.
But I had when I would say when I was in Tokyo, 2006, it was interesting. Tokyo in this time. There was no smartphones, you know. But already in 2006 in Tokyo, all the people in the subway was they had something like a phone, but and they could read books, and everybody was reading books, and so and you have this on something like a smartphone, and I was wondering because there was not really a smartphone. You could see that it was not the right tactic, but everybody did it. And they have this 25 million. It's I think poor capitalistic city, Tokyo for me.
Poor capitalistic.
Pure.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, it's always you can. And then I was in this shop in some shops where they make what do you say?
Sake?
No, they're closed here. Kimonos. You know, the hand-woven kimonos of silk. And this hand-woven silk, there's some shops, they are, I don't know, have since generations, I don't know, 400 years old family, you know, and they produce this, and it costs maybe between $2,000 and $10,000. This kimono. But if you look at it, you know, and you think about, I know it as a producer, you know, I know 10,000 euro, it's nothing to produce this kind of pieces. It's completely okay, you know. Yeah. And they make maybe $1,000 or 500, profit very less. And I'm sure these families who produce this kind of kimonos, they make this decision. For them, it's not important to have, they have to make a profit, but for them, it's more, it's their life. They say, this is our identity. We do this since, you know, it's our knowledge, and we will continue. You know, it's more about if they survive, if they can survive. But I realized in Tokyo, you could see this. There was a few of these shops, also this produced this kind of crafts, and there's a personal decisions of people who want to do this. And I think this is, I must say again, you know, we have to, if you think about meaning, and so we have to think about how we make decisions, you know. Sure. You could see with the internet and also, but I think it was also before, you know, as this postmodern thinking, you know. Everybody is his own capitalist and so and try to optimize his body and his life, and you know, then people stay alone, you know, they have no family or they have no relationship to other things, so they are not taking care of each other because they are always in this competition. Yeah. And if they want to make a change, it's not only about the big system, it's also about their own life, you know. They have to make a decision. They say, okay, I wanna be related to something. I wanna. This is my tree. I take care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I plant this tree and I go there. Also in the summer, last summer it was so hot, so I have a garden and they have beautiful trees. They are 300 years old, and yet you have to go there and you know, and give them water.
Sure.
Otherwise they will die.
Yeah.
So
I think this goes back to the idea that the medium is the message. You
Yeah.
know, the fact that there is somebody there making these kimonos and they have, you know, the fact that they are doing it in a certain way, that is a message that speaks about
Yes.
what their values are
yeah.
in that way. And I think, you know, the materials you use, the way you express yourself, the medium,
Yeah.
it speaks about what your values are.
And the value is not growth.
The value is not necessarily growth. It's about taking joy in process.
Yeah.
I think process has been actually vital to everything we've spoken about today. The idea of process, the idea of medium.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of connection. Because nobody is saying connection is bad. It's just the vehicle for that connection in that way. And there is a very top-down view that you have to express yourself through these certain channels. And there is a pressure. And there is a guilt.
Yeah.
But then there's the bottom-up thing, which is what you've described with the kimonos, which goes in the other way. But there's a contraflow. You know, it's pushing again, and that's what creates.
I think
tension.
that there are two parallel things which need each other. you
Yes.
know? I think you need this grid also to organize all these things. So, it is not not a counterpart.
No.
It's more parallel. It's like the Vichy, you know, when they make these abstract pictures about the jungle, you know, they bring it in an order to think about the reality. So they need this grid as a model to bring order in their life, to think about weather and all these things. So it's parallel. And in this way, also you could also use WhatsApp in a way, you know. If you understand,
That's my question. That's my question. Is it? I mean, if we share this kind of good pluralistic dream, which I hope is not only a liberal fantasy, that it's good, and the pluriverse, the idea that we have these many worlds, and it's better. I think like it's better to have many worlds on the planet, many civilizations, many kinds of.
You have to give them power. This is important.
So these parallel worlds, I agree that that's a dream. And
why this I don't like. It's not a dream. It's reality. You know, I had it.
No, but this is my objection to you. See, my question is, and the big experiment is that we don't know whether a world in which there are computers is compatible with a world in which there are many worlds.
Yeah. This is
we don't know. It's a big experiment.
No. Maybe the computer was made to destroy the pluriverse. This is actually a little bit my fear.
I think this is a left-wing thesis.
No, it's not. On the left was in favor of the computer. And is, of course.
No, but this is
the left is pro-modernist.
There was someone found this machine because he could found it, you know. And there was mathematic people. He was not left and right wing.
No, that's my point.
But we can use it in different ways. And you know, because you say about dreams, you know.
We don't know.
I did a film about kibbutz in Israel, and Einarot. And this kibbutz exists since 1949, I think. And they have this basic income since this time. These are now 70 years.
Yeah, one of those good
and
post-communist.
And really interesting, the first what they did, they built a theater, they built a museum, they built a hall where they have food together, you know. So and then later they built the houses. So and still existing. And then I made a film about a play about children and so, and I presented in a museum. I think did you have seen this?
Yeah, I know.
And there was a journalist from the main radio station in Germany, and he was in this show, and I could see he was really impressed how these kids play, and about also this idea from this kibbutz that is still existing. They have electric cars since 25 years. They have basic income. They're living in the landscape, and they have museum. And they have culture and basic life. Sorry, at the same time. And then he make a text about this. And then on he said inside the text he said Olaf his social romantic ideas. And then make it, he said it's a dream, but it's not a dream because it's existing since 70 years. But it's maybe not for, and this is also people criticize these keyboards and say it's not really a method for it isn't.
You can't organize an entire
it's not really working for so.
It's not universal.
So it's not, but it's not important, It works there. Maybe there are existing 20 keyboards which still continue, and this is important that the 20 keyboards existing, and also they did it for 70 years, and maybe they will stop it in the future, and some other person will do this. And I think we should stop to generalization, make this generalization, say, okay, we have to live in kibbutzes now. The whole Israel has to live in kibbutz now. This is not right. A few people. And I think this is kind of a diversity, we should accept that we have this different kind of cultures, and the people in the desert has a different kind of, has to live different,
But isn't the point that perhaps, and I may be completely wrong with this, that the internet and connectivity perhaps inevitably pushes people towards homogenization of, take early Twitter, for example, which was meant, all of these utopias that are made, and they have their rules, and 140 characters, and it pushes you towards a certain sort of message, a certain sort of connectivity, and then it pushes you towards hegemony, it pushes you towards being the same. And then you do have the kibbutz situation, you do have these people who do not want to take part in that.
No, but I realize
they
that,
do
for
not
example,
see the positivity because it's not for them. But then when you choose to go against that, what happens to your friend?
That's what
That's
I'm
what
worried
happens.
about. Yeah,
because it's the tyranny of the media, the medium. The medium has its tyranny. And to actually acknowledge that is not to say it is bad. It's because it is, as it stands, it is just a thing. It is just a tool.
Exactly.
But it is made by people and people with vested interests. And it's often, when we're talking about the net, fine, you can say the net is a perfectly peaceable, lovely technology. In the same way that the people who built the first nuclear bombs, they were scientists. They were solving a problem.
Then they wrote. They know they build bombs.
Yeah, but then they wrote. Then they wrote to the president, and they said, "You must never use. We have solved your problem.
You can never use the bomb we made for you.
You can never. Can you please?" And this was a big. And Eisenstein did not sign it. Einstein did.
Leo Szilard and Einstein.
Yeah. And they said, you must explode this over the sea. You must show what you can do, but do not use it against people. In the same way you could say about the internet and all of these things. You must,
But we only use it for people.
We only use it for people. It must be used without people. It must exist in a museum.
You must use the internet above the ocean.
Yes, only above the net, the cloud. The cloud must exist only off land, not on land. In that way, but you could
In
say...
my museum, it will be there.
Yeah, exactly. But you could say it's a machine, but it's the people. I'm not saying the people are the problem. I'm saying it was built by people, and so it has these intrinsic problems of the fact it's...
The thing is, yes, but it's a machine. Well, it's not just it's a program, right? It's a set of rules that are actually much more determining, I think, than, So this vision of it's just a tool. This is a little bit my biggest qualm or my biggest.
Well, you mentioned this earlier. I brought it back to you.
So no, I know. Yes, no, for sure. I mean, the medium is the message. So it's a much more certain things are written into the program is written in such a way to completely exclude certain possibilities from the world. And it's a little the point that you made about being in Tokyo in 2006, and already then you saw everyone. And this is, of course, now our reality when you're in a city. When you're in a train station or when you're sitting in the subway, and it's basically the entire coach, and everyone's like this, right? Mm-hmm. And it's very easy to get depressed by. But sometimes I kind of have this. I play this game where I think maybe everyone's reading the Communist Manifesto. Or maybe they're all reading Greta Thunberg's speech to the UN, and of course they're not.
Of course, we read it. Yes.
Yes, we did read it. So the thing is, like, so, and this is a little bit kind of like the fork in the road. If we're all, kind of completely consumed by our screen, and we're all reading the same kind of liberating message, then why if that could be true, then why aren't we there in a way, right?
Why aren't we better?
But because
Gilead
these big companies, they bought all the. In the beginning, this technology means not that there's one language. In the beginning, there was a lot of different companies, and now when you say we read this, means okay, we read the message from two companies.
Yeah.
And that's the so.
It's a little bit like the hegemony.
This kibbutz not has or whatever the farmers of Patagonia, they have not their own network. Also, they're owned by someone from the West Coast.
Sure.
And that's the point. But it's maybe not. I think it's not the technology. It's more how it is. How someone own it.
Yeah.
There's one or a few people owns this, and this is the problematic point. If I think. For example, when I was in Israel, my idea was not to go to Israel. My idea was to go to Syria.
Yes.
And because I worked with the VG, and they are semi-nomadic people, and then someone invited me make a tent in the Middle East, and then someone said to me, Olaf, you have to go to Homs. And in Syria, and I was there. I was there first in Israel, with a producer, and they said, "Oh, yeah, we have to go to Homs."
Was the Syrian war already?
It was. No, it was short before. It was a half year before.
So you could have been the Susan Sontag
of
Homs, doing her Waiting for Godot. You were building your tent.
But that's why I'm say this. Nobody speaks about these nomads. Also in the Syrian war, it's only about the cities,
Sure.
Homs and but Syria was the only country in this region which has really a huge community of nomads. Bedouins, and they are not exist. I don't know.
20,000.
But they are not existing, But they connect all these huge patterns, and they was connected by this. There was a very old circle culture, and they was not part of this. When they speak about war, they speak only about the centers. It was the same, and then this ISIS, they copied the Hollywood, and so it was the same language. They are not this very important minority from the Bedouins. They was not in the press. They're not existing. And that's the point, They are not. They have no power in technology. So, and I think this has to be changed.
Like the Aborigines as well.
Yeah.
They have the song lines. They have this deep connection. They have their networks.
If they would have their own, if they could produce their own, and it is possible. It's not so expensive, but they have not, because. Apple and so, they bought all the laws. When they bought Nokia and Motorola, they bought all the laws. So now, if you would make your own network, you have to pay them, and the main income of them it's this kind of they have all this copyrights.
No, I mean we live in the age of monopoly, but I think that monopoly is the product of this culture in a way. Anyway, it's.
But it's not a product of the internet.
But I'm interested in this thing about
I disagree. I actually think that the internet was, of course, not invented to produce this monopoly.
Yeah.
But I think that the monopoly was enabled by the internet. So I mean, this is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's like a little bit of a catch-22. The internet was developed. Firstly, the grid as this electronic knowledge machine was developed for military purposes, first and foremost. Never forget, all the great 20th century breakthroughs in the communications technology have military roots. So they're always developed by the state, kind of independent businesses don't have the means of production to kind of implement these things. So these technologies always kind of come preconditioned to point us in some direction. And early on, what happened, and this is of course also what the art world embraced in the 90s, like there was like the internet this technology was very early on hijacked by libertarians and by the art world and by kind of like the forces of utopia and emancipation. And this produced like this euphoria of 20 years where it did look like this was going to deliver us from evil, but it's over. And I think it's over because it was always a military industry to begin with, or a military technology to begin with. And
I would say that the two different things. One is the military and one is the bourgeois class.
Yeah.
And I think the military, they build states and grids. This did also, for example, in India, they built it 3,000 years ago. So as it is, also they had the cities like a grid. I think the interest from the military is not to build this kind of, what we say, this kind of new economy, monopoly. They build grid. They're making order. They're not. But the other thing, this kind of. What we speak, what you mean, this monopoly, I think this is more from the bourgeois class. It's not from the military. It's not from the founder, from the internet. It's how the people use it. I mean, the people who owns now this internet, they are not military people. They're all bankers, bourgeois people. I think it's not because of, as I think those are two different things.
But the control.
Huh?
There is a symmetry in the control. It comes from the military and then it goes into the world of technology. But there is a definite mirror in the control. When anything gets large enough. I mean, you get companies large enough to be countries, states. They have more power. They assassinate people by virtue of the fact that it would be best for the technology, for the status quo.
But for example, in East Germany, where I grew up, there was this Stasi, like the
secret police.
Yeah.
Surveillance mechanism.
So, okay, on the beginning, they built up a state in the 50s, and so there was also this kind of, but later, this Stasi, there was 100,000 of people was working for them, spions, in the civil. But it was only because the system, not the military, the system, it was collapsed. It was rotten. And the ideology of the country was not alive. And everybody, this little bourgeois, they was all connecting to the power and it was an expression of this. Everybody was compromised.
Sure.
And I have sometimes the feeling right now that we are in a similar. We have, for example, now if you're part of the grid, if you can plug you in this kind of network, you're one of the important administrators. You have not to produce anything. You have to be on the right knot. So and then making decisions. Then you have power. But this was in the GDR, a bit is the same, because you have to be in the party, in the Communist Party. Of course. You have to be in the right position.
No, I completely agree.
You have not to be an engineer. You have not to produce anything. You have to be on the right position, and then you can make your decisions. And everybody has to follow you.
Yeah, no, this is complete. No, you're totally right. I mean, in a way. I mean, the problem of kind of global politics on the American model is that it's basically a one-party state, where it's a little bit like that, like that's a good point. We're all apparatchiks now.
Yes.
I mean, not us.
And I think a bit, not cynical, but I think they have to be, because we are so many humans. You have to be all a part of the party,
Surveillance
I mean,
drones.
I say to my assistants always, they are not having a very good income because it's really not easy to make money with physical work,
True.
But it's a privilege,
Yeah.
Because you're connecting something. You have experiences. You feel your body. We discuss about space all the time, and when we build an installation, we never know what we do. It's really an adventure, and it's a privilege.
What do you think of the?
So-
I mean, we have this sort of empirical fact that so many people are connected to electricity and to the internet and this stuff. And then we have the movements who are sort of, I mean, it's quite explicit, it's marginal, but it's vocal. All the people who disconnect, the nomads in Syria, they are not so much connected into the net, perhaps, and maybe some of the nomads somewhere else. So those are, and then all the new expressions, people who move out from cities, you know, or self-sustenance, the Swaraj, the independence movement, where you produce, like the gardening, you have your gardens and you're not dependent on the global chain of production. You have you pick your mushrooms. You have your eco villages. We have a forest institute in Finland where people live without money for decades, and through physical labor produce. These are small expressions, but they are becoming important in the. But important for some people in the physical reality, important for many people in their minds.
Yeah.
So I think it's important because I think the grid, with all its success, is so incredibly vulnerable. Like we saw, I mean, your experience of GDR, that the thing that was supposed to be there forever collapsed overnight.
Overnight. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
It is interesting on this.
So imagine the technology collapse. I mean, you've seen it. Maybe I don't know what, but people have lived through collapse.
Yeah.
I met recently a woman from Romania who was, I think, 15 or 16 when Ceausescu and his wife were murdered in the palace. Yeah. This was Christmas Day 1989.
Or 89. Yeah.
I think, or was
89,
it?
89.
Christmas Day 89. So Ceausescu is murdered, and she's 15, 16, and she lives several days, in this state of complete bewilderness that the impossible has happened. That it's a real miracle. The scarf and the pictures and everything she grew up with is gone. And it was just the thing you could not even dream of.
No, but it's
the collapse happened.
But Romania has a special thing.
How important is it that so many people now think that Google is there forever and the chip is there forever, and when it collapses, maybe 2 years from now, maybe 22 years, or maybe 200 years from now, I mean, how are we equipped for addressing that shift?
I think I don't have an answer, obviously, but
I'm not saying it's gonna collapse, but it might.
Yeah.
It will be transformed. It's too big.
But I mean, Stasi was transformed.
No, it
into
wasn't.
what?
No, but I'm not sure if they are. If these Google people, it's not like Stasi,
It's not, or is
I think it's
No,
more short-lived.
It's not like Stasi.
Well, no, it's a bit. I mean, this is.
The big brother who is there,
because
the presence of which you can't.
No,
even,
because we give them the power. If you, I think, for example, in GDR, they built these satellite states, houses. There's like these concrete houses.
Sure.
And the center of the cities, like middle of Berlin and also Dresden,
Yes.
there was this beautiful house from the 19th century, and it was completely old, in old, very bad conditions. And I thought as a child, if people would not go to these new houses,
Yes.
they would say, I want to go to this old house, they would repair this. But, they built these concrete houses on the periphery and with warm water, and they moved there.
Yeah.
So there was not a little bit as there was the movement was not big enough against this.
Yeah.
So and later in the 80s, there was more and more young people, students and alternative people, who moved to these old quartiers,
Yes.
And also there the movement starts against So all this ecological movement in the 80s starts there in Prenzlauer Berg, in Berlin, and also in Dresden, in Neustadt.
Yes.
So, but it means people have to change their
Desires.
yes, and if they change, if they change the way how they use the internet, I think the companies, they will follow because it's their business.
No, but Stasi didn't follow; it collapsed.
Yeah, but this is Stasi was from the state. It was like there was criminal people. I mean, if Trump and Google would merge to one company, then we had really a big problem.
Yeah.
So,
No,
But Trump merged with Twitter in a way.
yes.
I read an interesting story recently about the mental health crisis among Facebook workers. Around the world, Facebook employs tens of thousands of people. And in fact, I think in continental Europe, Berlin is the hub. And there must be a place in Berlin, there must be one building where thousands and thousands of Facebook employees do nothing each day except moderate content, which means watch the most repellent videos and read the most repulsive stuff. Like, they watch rapes and they watch, like human sacrifice and suicides and like bombings and I don't know what. And then they read all these things. And so the mental health crisis in these institutions, in these business empires, it has to do with the exposure to all of this vile material, which I think is just produced by the machine. In fact, I think it's written into the machine, but we've already talked about that. But actually, the bigger issue is that many of these moderators are increasingly lured to more and more fringe views. And, Facebook at this point in time is a much more powerful tool for the dissemination of extreme right views than anything else. Like, it's as if, like kind of the return of very explicit racisms and explicit fascisms in Europe and America, it has been facilitated it's made possible by this. By these conglomerates. And, again, you don't read how moderators are lured to fringe views that tug the way of socialism. No. It's the opposite. I mean, socialism as in what we kind of generally agree to be like, kind of left-wing views of the economic...
From the beginning, Facebook, they said, okay, we have no standards. That's why,
Yeah,
normally you have in a civil
because they're just a tool. Of course they.
They know they are. This is really what it. Normally you have.
Yeah, they don't moderate. I know.
Yeah.
This is what they said. We don't moderate, like freedom of speech.
Yeah.
It's one of the most dangerous delusions known to man. Freedom of speech.
But I think
that's optimistic.
I would say, if we'd ended at that point, that would have been
grim.
Yeah,
off the grim.
Off the grim.
Fine.
So we're all going to log off the internet immediately, and that's the end of that.
I will write you a letter.
Thank you. That would be nice. I will wait 1 week.
Yeah, we've seen your handwriting. It's very promising, much better than mine.
What
Oh,
is?
really?
Yeah, you can compare. You see this?
Yeah, handwriting?
Oh, I like your handwriting.
Okay. So now
Well, at least we can
so
still...
is this a
And
different
it's on the
style?
grid.
But look,
you
look.
see how it's on the grid?
Yeah.
like
Paper with lines. Yeah.
I like how everyone took actual kind of analog notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, analog.
To be... is there anything to say in conclusion?
I like how everyone
think
took
it's
analog
a bit,
notes. I quite like that.
There was this grid off grid, and I think there was one is about this political idea. We spoke a lot about internet.
Yeah. I would like more about the shed.
But I think for me, back to the VG, there is
yes.
this grid. It's always there. It's a model.
Course,
it's a model.
Yeah,
It's not positive, negative. It's a kind of the order or so, or maybe also the technology is not the point. It's really about how we use this. And it's about more our meaning. How much power we give them.
Yeah, sure. One thing that I actually didn't get a chance to tell anyone here by way of introduction, because of course, Dan, you were suggested it was through Lara, so you're like an interloper in a way. But Thomas and Olaf are people that I've known, and Olaf, I've known you for some time. And in fact, you commissioned me to write an essay about your work sometime in 2009 or something. And I think I wrote something about the grid.
Yes.
And of course, this did not involve a value judgment about the good or bad of the grid, but the grid as just like an artistic given, and Mondrian and weaving and all that. So yes, I mean, when we say off the grid, throughout we have obviously meant, the prison of connectivity, outside of which the hut arises.
I mean that there's I built this in the house Lange right now.
Yeah.
I built an installation and in Ried, and there's a house, there's one space which is very quiet because of this Ried. It's like a fiber.
Can you show?
And
you have a longhouse, a Sumatra longhouse. Is that what you have?
Huh?
It's a longhouse. Is that?
No, House Lange in Krefeld is a museum.
Okay.
It's not a longhouse.
Okay.
And
that would be.
But my thinking why I choose this material, no? I mean, when Mies van der Rohe built this house, and then he tried to make something. There was this new technology, and they built more like this horizontal architecture. Say, okay, we try to be true as an architect. We try to see where we are, and then we do something in this. Okay, we are in the industrial time, and then he built his horizontal houses. But in the same time, he changed also the landscape. He work a lot with this landscape, make an open house. Yeah. But in the same time, this house was organized, I would say, in this horizontal way, like a factory was organized, then, or there was this metaphoric from Le Corbusier, like a house.
Machina habitée.
Yes, a house is like a machine and so. Yeah. And I thought today, what he would do, Mies.
Yeah.
Because he was thinking about, also you could see the relationship between landscape and so, and I thought, okay, now he would do something with which is more, you need space for intimacy, so a space where you can make a break, be off the grid for a moment.
Sorry, there's one thing that I forgot to mention. Yeah. You live in Berlin, you live in Bristol, and you live in Helsinki. Yes. And these are European cities that were born. I don't know how old they are, but I know what they look like and feel like. And I'm I'm European, I always will be, but I live in a city that is shaped like a chessboard, where there's only ever straight angles in which streets meet, and it produces a completely different social experience of space. And it's hard actually to imagine how deep the impact is. Yeah. But there's no squares. American cities do not have squares.
Well,
there's no places. There's no places for people
which is
to
a maze. It makes no sense.
It's a maze. Yes, it's a maze.
But the oldest cities of the world in the Ganges Valley, 3,000 years before Jesus, they are also in the same way like these American cities.
I know. American cities are of course. I mean, I know they're old.
It's not.
The grid is old in that way. It's probably older than the organic growth of European cities.
Yes.
I'm not.
I thought it was labyrinthic in the Ganges. I thought in the Ganges plains 3,000 years back that the cities would have been labyrinthic.
No. They are grids.
Okay, I didn't know. Okay.
I think they had both.
Well, they're very central.
It's only a system. I mean, in Patagonia, the new cities also made like a grid.
It's only a system.
It's a system, and I think it can be also very organic. I mean, there are beautiful work from Solowit about.
Of course.
They are organic. It's
Sure. Yeah, yes, grids are, the way our DNA is formed is perfectly symmetrical.
Exactly, the cells.
All that, that's all true. Yes, but I just wanted to make an observation about how the grid as an organizational principle imposed on, kind of living space just produces completely different social outcomes. Yes. And yes, I prefer the maze.
Well, maybe I can tie this together a little because, I just said Venice, it makes no sense. But of course it makes sense from the water. it makes sense depending on where you stand. Do you stand on the land, or are you aquatic in that way? And I think everything that we've spoken about, it depends on your point of view, and it depends how you are approaching. Are you approaching something with a particular mindset, which is perhaps land-based, when actually the medium needs to be water, or vice versa? So there is a sense to be made in all of this. It just depends what your original standing point and your, I don't know, what's the Greek word? Your epistemology. It depends on your epistemology and your starting point as to the sense of the thing that you are engaged with. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think what you say about water makes lots of sense. And I think what one aspect of modernity tries to do to water, what it does to people. I mean, you don't want the water to flow like it does meandering, like it does in Venice. You want it to be packed in a pipe and deliver electricity for the people in the grid. So water has to be in the grid, and people have to be in the grid, and the world has to be in the grid, and then it's perfect. I mean, it's a dream. It's not. It was a dream, and I suppose it still is a dream. So Venice is very bad.
What? Yeah. Someone should straighten Venice out.
Lots of old-fashioned water, running wild, floating this way or that way.
It's eccentric.
Eccentric.
It's eccentric.
That's not what we want.
That's not
Decentralized.
what we want. No, there should be some. We could cut it up in straight lines.
I would say something to this, because Dieter was more focusing on this internet as quid, And there's another quid. This is a pocket calculator, these phones. And I think this is one of the points, we start to calculating our time and programming our time. And that's the point, we try to optimize, making a profit on this. Yeah. And it's always about growing. But it's not because of the grid, it's more about how we thinking, this bourgeois, to make a profit with self-optimization and try to be a bit faster and better organized as your competitor.
Yeah, use your time well.
So, and I think this is all this hysterical, because that's why it's also connected with the mobile phone so much, because everybody's connecting his... with this frame here, So you're optimizing your time in this kind of little machine. Yeah. And always what the other people do. You have not your own time. For example, you have not your own time.
Well, isn't it interesting? The indigenous populations that have never met other indigenous populations have never met anything outside their little bubble, and their concept of time, their concept of history, is completely different. Where time, they don't recognize time as the more Western view of an ongoing moment.
Linear, sure.
They don't recognize history as a linear ongoing moment. And so actually, in this way, this idea of control is because perhaps we're all accepting of things that are actually the given, the standpoint, where you accept time exists, you accept that history exists, all of this stuff. And actually, perhaps, fundamentally, there are grids that we don't even see anymore because of the place you grew up, the philosophy of the country, the philosophy of the hemisphere, the philosophy of the planet, all of these things.
Well, isn't it wonderful? We're in this bunker, and in this bunker we're off the grid. And we don't have a time limit. The time horizon here is I feel it's very liberating to be in this bunker, I must say.
I feel it's very liberating to be in a bunker.
Yeah. I feel at ease here. We don't,
I'm just a little hungry.
Time is on our side.
We have gone back to lunchtime.
Yeah, lunchtime.
We are physically, the time is physical. It's kind of like, I am hungry. We've gone back to first principles of timekeeping.
Lunch.
Biological time.
Yes, hunger. It's eat o'clock.
Hunger, perhaps not, but greed is there.
Greed, desire.
Yeah.
Desire.